I have just finished doing a high school assembly right here in Reno. And I want to tell you what I told them because on a deeper level, perhaps than what they heard, there's something that really needs to be said. We know that we now live in a time where there is open hostility toward the Christian faith in America. No need to rehearse that or go over it. Some of it justified, much of it not justified. All of it predicted in Matthew 10, verse 22, when Jesus said, "You will be hated by all nations." So what I'm going to do is talk to you about the fact that holding your morals, holding your convictions, and holding on to your beliefs in this atmosphere is not something that you can take for granted. Something has changed that requires you to be more aware and stronger and more, shall we say, closely and intimately connected to God on a level you weren't before. Now, I'm going to read some verses and then explain why they're important. Daniel chapter 1, starting at verse 8. But Daniel made up his mind not to eat the food and the wine given to him by the king. He asked the superintendent for permission to abstain and to eat other things instead. In verse 9 it says, "Now it happened that God had given the superintendent appreciation for Daniel's predicament." That's how the Living Bible reads it. "And gave him sympathy for his predicament, but he was alarmed by Daniel's suggestion. 'I'm afraid you will become pale and thin compared to the other youths your age.' He said, 'and then the king will behead me for neglecting my responsibilities.' Daniel talked it over with the steward, who was appointed by the superintendent to look after Daniel and his friends, and suggested a 10-day diet where of only vegetables and water. In verse 13, at the end of the trial period, the steward could see how they looked in comparison to the other fellows who ate the king's rich food and decide whether he should let them continue on this diet. The steward finally agreed for the test. Well, at the end of 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends looked healthier and better nourished than the youths who had been eating the food supplied by the king. When I'm looking at young people, regardless of age, whether we're talking junior high, middle school, high school, college, or beyond, one thing that every one of your mentors, everyone who's trying to teach you has this one thing in common. They're trying to prepare you for a future that they can't accurately predict. In other words, if I stand here and tell you this is what you need to know in order to face the future, I'm working very much from a gut conviction and part prophetic. And Daniel, the story of Daniel, and the reason that in 2016, right here at the end of May, is so important is that he had a future that he could not possibly have prepared for from his teachers or his mentors. Whatever it was that made it through the transformation from Jerusalem to Babylon was something that had to come deep within. Now, I'm going to make a statement that seems contradictory, but I want you to look at it. These are good times and these are bad times. And as Dickens said at the beginning of A Tale of Two Cities, it's the best of times, the worst of times. What's so bad is that a lot of the rules for what would cause you to be successful have gone out the window. They're not going to matter. There's a lot of things that teachers are spending a great deal of time in preparation for a world that either no longer exists or is about to go away. The Babylonian culture was nothing that Daniel was used to, nor was it anything he was prepared for. But he decided to hold on to his core values. And this is the importance of what he did. And I want you to watch this. He said, "Let us be tested." Compare the way we live to the way they live, the values we have to the values they have. Right now, the most important thing about the Bible and the gospel and the faith of Christ is what it is, not what you are. You are important, obviously. Jesus died for you. You're priceless. But the priority in this talk is about the gospel, the Bible, and Christ. Because much of the behavior of Christians is indefensible. Many of our churches are dead. We are hopelessly divided on many issues, and we are presenting to the world a very fractured and handicapped version of Jesus. But I submit to you that that can be turned into an argument for the faith, not against it. Well, how's that possible? Shouldn't the faith produce powerful people? No, I like what Woodrow Wilson said, the president. He said, the proof that the gospel is divine is the preaching it has survived. So today we're talking specifically of what did Daniel's reliance on God do for him in this situation. He looked better, thought better, and lived better than those his own age. When a young person decides to be a Christian in this toxic environment that we're in right now, their friends will say, that's crazy. That's going to make you feel worse, look worse, believe worse. You're going to be mentally inferior. Everything about you is going to be subpar to your generation. The fact of the matter is that after 10 days, it says Daniel looked better. Now, again, I'm not defending the church system, the religious failures of the church. What I am doing in this moment is talking about the superiority of the power. You have to take a stand. You have to take a stand in an oppositional and in a hostile and a atmosphere where people are going to question the validity of what you believe. So here is what I say. First, test us. Daniel, don't be afraid to challenge the culture. Christians ought not to be hiding in safe zones, afraid that their faith, once subjected to the light of day or in honest reasoning or in a forum of open debate, will collapse and die. It'll do the opposite. I'm not, in this case, harrowing my debating skills or your debating skills, but the inherent power of the Word of God itself, that it rises in adversity. It becomes stronger. That's why when Jesus prayed, he did not ask that the church be taken out of the world. He said that the world would be kept from the evil one. Now, again, keep it in mind. Show the power of serving God in a hostile culture. Now, it says in verse 20, I'm going to read it again, in all manners requiring information, balanced judgment, the king found these young men's advice 10 times better than that of all the skilled magicians and wise astrologers in his realm. No matter what rage, anger, bias in the media, or anti-God philosophy comes against you, God has the power to promote you. That's why you should not ask to escape, number one. Number two, feel sorry for yourself, but to understand that what Daniel did is he experienced what many of you who are watching experience. A future he could not have predicted, in a culture he had zero tolerance or ability to live in. And lastly, he knew that nothing that he had brought over from Israel except the rock-solid conviction that God was real was going to help him. And what happened? When he said no, he qualified himself for a miracle. He didn't realize that all that he had prepared for, what he thought had gone down the drain, was going to reappear in a whole new form. And that form was that he would be prime minister of the most powerful nation in the world. Daniel could not have had an iota of the influence on world events if Israel had not been invaded, if he had not been kidnapped and brought to Babylon. The world events of today are not a villain or an enemy or a death sentence to your vision or your belief. They can be a catalyst. The child of God who surrenders appropriately to the times that they live in will see a remarkable thing. Let's take us, for example. My heroes are Billy Graham, Oral Roberts, The list goes on and on and on. Catherine Kuhlman, David Wilkerson. But let's go back even further. Billy Sunday, D.L. Moody, and Charles Finney, Charles Spurgeon. These are all men that I admire, men and women that I admire. Amy McPherson. But in each and every case, they faced a ground zero reevaluation of what soul winning is. That's what we're doing right now in this ministry. We're looking at times that have changed. We're looking at doors that have been not only closed, but nailed shut. But we're watching God retool us, reinvigorate us, redefine us, and refocus us. We're not changing our message. We're changing the approach to getting it out. That's what you need to look at your life and see. Things that you right now might perceive as a total handicap to the future can actually launch you. God bless you, and I pray that this will be taken to heart.